How is it that even though he was encompassed by a multitude of enemies all around him, and it seemed that he was trapped inside this situation, how was it that he was able to remain calm and to remain fearless and to not be afraid and to remain confident in spite of what was going on around him? And God revealed to me that David recognized God as his light, as his salvation, and as his strength. And as a result of recognizing God in these three major characteristics, David was able to remain calm, remain confident, and to remain fearless, even though he was encompassed by a multitude of enemies all around him. And what God revealed to me is that in the midst of our circumstances and situations, if we possess this Ori of God, then we have the ability to see things as God sees them. He not only gives us the ability to see our enemies or to see our situations or to see our circumstances in whatever shape that they may be in, but he also gives us the ability to see how those enemies, how those strongholds will be defeated. In warfare, we want to have the advantage or have the upper hand of being able to see our enemies from a far way off. And because we want that ability to be able to see our enemies, if we allow God to be our sight, to be our illumination, then God will show us even from a far way off where our enemies are coming from, where our circumstances or situations are coming from, long before they even begin to attack us. Because if we are able to see our enemies or see our circumstances or see our situations, not only can we see them, but God will then show us how we can defeat them. It's almost like being given a cheat code to a video game. Even though we still have to get through the video game, by God giving us the cheats to the game, we already know not only how the enemy's going to attack us, but we also know how we can defeat the enemy as well. But the second attribute rather of God that we want to possess and recognize is the Hebrew word Yesha, which stands for the deliverance part of salvation. Basically means to save me. In situations that seem too perilous for us, that they seem almost impossible for us to get out, God will deliver us from our situations and from our circumstances. In Matthew chapter 6, Jesus tells the disciples to pray the prayer that is now commonly known as the Lord's Prayer. And in that prayer, it says, deliver us from evil. We're asking God all the time to be our salvation, to be our deliverance, to save us from situations that we ourselves cannot get out of. We find ourselves in perilous times all the time. Again, with sicknesses that seem incurable, or financial situations that never seem to amount to more than $10 in the bank, or family problems where you have a messed up husband, messed up wife, or messed up kids, messed up boyfriend or girlfriend, or family members you just can't talk to anymore, an estranged brother, or somebody who's strung out on drugs and never seems to get out of their situation and trying to drag you into it. In these situations that seem almost impossible to get out of, it's in those moments that God will deliver us from our situations and from our circumstances if we allow him to be the deliverance that we need. And deliverance doesn't always mean that he will completely pluck us out of our situations, although sometimes he will. But sometimes the deliverance can simply be the mere presence of his peace, or his calmness, or the stillness of him dwelling within our hearts. And in doing that, allowing us to be able to be in the midst of the situation, but not allow the situation to overcome us. And then the last attribute, which isn't the last attribute of God, but it's the third attribute in this particular passage, is Ma'ozi. And Ma'ozi is talking about the strength of God, or rather the defense of God. We oftentimes think about God being or the strength of God, talking about brute strength, muscles, and, you know, being able to fight and attack our situations. But sometimes we just need God to guard us from our situations, or to guard us from our circumstances, because God takes those bitter stings away from us by equipping us with his defense. Now, it doesn't mean that we won't be attacked, and it doesn't mean that the attack won't hurt. We often mistake being a Christian to mean that we'll never go through a situation or a circumstance that will hurt our feelings, or that will make us mad, or will crush our spirits. But what should have taken us out has instead offered us the opportunity to be built up stronger than what we once were. And the reason for that is because God became our main line of defense. And in being our main line of defense, he allowed himself to take the brunt force of what should have taken us out, and allows us to feel some type of pain or some type of suffering, so that we can then be built up and made stronger than what we were before. Rest in the comfort of knowing that God has already orchestrated how it's going to work out. And all we have to do is really sit back and watch God work. There's a part that we need to do all the time, and God will direct our paths and show us what we need to do. But we can rest in the comfort of knowing that after we've done everything that we can, God has already worked it out. And so there's nothing that we need to fear, nothing that we need to worry about, nothing that we need to concern ourselves with. And this is why David was able to give God praise while he was hidden and encompassed around all his enemies.